And what is up, everybody? It is the Beast. Welcome back to the channel, The Beast on. Hey, if you hear this voice, if you see this ugly mug, subscribe to the channel. I would love your subscription. I would love your support. Hit the little bell to be notified when new videos are out. And share the videos. If you see this on Twitter, if you see this on Facebook, share it. Share it. Don't just heart it. Don't just like it. But share it. Retweet it. Spread the love. Tell your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, all of them, everyone. Okay. As you can tell, I'm here in front of the Clevelander. Not really in front of the Clevelander, and certainly not with this many people around not wearing masks. Evidently, this picture was taken pre-pandemic, at least I hope so, although we're in Florida, where it just doesn't matter. I am in the home studio in front of a green screen, but I chose the Clevelander as the backdrop for a reason, and that is because, as many of you know, that follow the sports radio and me specifically and everybody else in the sports radio industry, you know that the Clevelander is where the Dan Le Batard empire is housed. And the reason why I bring that up is because it was announced, if you're watching this today, it is Friday, November 4th, and yesterday, Thursday, November 3rd, it was announced that Dan Le Batard and his crew would be leaving ESPN, their place of doing work for the last decade, I think. I don't know about the years. Dan's been doing ESPN work for a long time, because I remember, as I've told the story, back in my early days at WQAM, when I was doing Saturday night into Sunday overnight board op shifts, one of my main responsibilities was opening the doors for a, I would say, mood-altered Dan Le Batard after a night in the Grove, as he stumbled in to do his Sunday morning sports page show on ESPN, where Greg Cody would sing the State Farm ad. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Yeah, that was all happening, and I had to set that up and engineer it and get the feed to ESPN. So he's been on ESPN for quite a while, like 20 years. But the ESPN Dan Le Batard show, as we know it now, is what, like a decade old? I don't even know at this point. Maybe less. Maybe a little bit less than a decade. I'm not sure. I guess they went national after I got to the ticket, which was in 2012. So somewhere around there. I don't really know. But it was announced yesterday that Dan and his crew will be done at ESPN January 4th, both on the TV side with HQ and the radio show and all that goes with it. And there's a lot of interesting questions about what happens next. Not only as it relates to Dan's show with Stu Gatz and Mike and Roy and Billy and Chris and Tony and the whole crew and Greg Cody and all of that stuff, but as it relates to, they've built up this podcast network, right? And who owns that? Does ESPN own that? Does Dan own that? I don't really know. The podcast network with Mina and with Marty and all these people that Dan has put together and given outlets to. I don't know who owns that. I don't know the legalities on that. I could find out, but I just haven't. Let me back up for a second and tell you how dumb I am. And I'm doing this from a selfish standpoint, of course, but just to really let you know how dumb I am. So, I've been trying over the last year since I left the ticket to figure out where my place is, what my future is as it relates to media going forward. And obviously, the logical place is something digital, because terrestrial radio is killing itself and dying. Although, listen, I've always said this. If someone from the terrestrial radio world reached out with a nice offer, I'd be more than happy to do it, because it's my first love. Radio, doing old school radio is my first love. It just doesn't seem like there's a bright future there, as thousands and thousands of my colleagues lose their jobs across the nation. But so as I plotted my future and I came up with some good ideas and whatever, and of course, now you start to get into, well, do you need investors? Can you take out loans? How do you put this together? What's the business structure? All of that nitty gritty stuff. I realized I just wasn't ready yet, or just didn't, I wasn't there yet. Plus then the pandemic happened and we're in a recession and money's not just floating around like it should be, and it's a little bit tougher than I thought it would be. So as I pondered that, always in the back of my mind, I thought about what's Dan's next move, because for a couple of reasons. One, anyone that knows Dan, and to say I know him is to say I know, we're not friends, and I've had some conversations with Dan over my time, but not very many. We're acquaintances, I guess. I know more about Dan through all of my friends that either work for him, have worked for him, have been around him, are friends with him, all of that stuff. But we have a really amicable relationship, and I even to back that further up, as I've said in previous videos, and I think it was my Chris Cody video, when Dan's show first came on, the ticket, I didn't really get it, even though I had worked with Dan before, in his ESPN Sunday morning show. I just didn't get the 790 show. Because I had been immersed in the world of sports radio with the Hammer and the Mad Dog, and this is how you do sports radio, and blah, 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 blah. And then as I grew up, as I understood what they were trying to do, it would get to the point where I'd be working at QAM, but I'd have Dan's show on the radio while I was working at QAM. That's how it went. And so over the years, I would say from like 2008 on, I've been kind of obsessed with the Dan Le Batard show. That's when I finally got it and understood it and what have you. And so then I went over to the ticket. That's where the Le Batard show was. And now I got to do, to work with those guys. And it was a blast. It was awesome. And so, Dan and I's relationship is amicable, but we're not, Dan wouldn't call me a friend. I wouldn't call him a friend. We haven't spent that much time together. Not because we don't like each other. It's just we haven't spent much time together. But everyone I know that knows Dan thinks of him in the highest terms, and if anything, Dan seems to always give sage advice about life and your role in life, your role in business, your role in whatever you're doing. I can't tell you how many people I know in this business in South Florida and beyond who have gotten just really great advice from Dan. He seems to really be able to put his finger on what's going on, what's the reality of a situation, maybe what you should be thinking about, what you should maybe be doing next. So all of that stuff. So that brings me, I'm trying to deliver the baby here, not doing a good job of it. So as I'm looking to plan my future, I always thought, I don't know what Dan's going to do next. I know he's not long for ESPN. This was, months ago, because he loves his freedom. Disney has given him about as much freedom as they could possibly give him. And at some point, this was just me, reading between the lines. Like at some point I realized that Dan was going to leave ESPN to go somewhere to do something that gave him all of the freedom that he wanted to be able to do what he wanted to do. And at that point in time, I wanted to reach out to Dan to say, hey, listen, I'm unemployed. I have a wealth of experience in radio. I've done it all. I've done radio management. I've been through the nuts and bolts. Plus, I know I've done everything in radio that you could possibly do. I think we are now on the same page. I think I've grown into a point where I'm on the same page as far as what the content should be on an entertaining radio show as opposed to what the executives think it should be. I'm not a old school sports radio person anymore. I love the hijinks and the shenanigans and all of that stuff. I'd love to, listen, whether you have any opportunities or not, where you're going, what you're doing, whatever, I'd love to at least just pick your brain, and maybe you have some sage advice for me. Maybe you could say, hey, Beast, blah, 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 try this, do this. And that's really what I was looking to do. Matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, I called someone who tangentially is involved kind of in the Dan Le Batard world. And I just picked this person's brain about, hey, what do you think the best way is to reach out? And, because I get scared. As much as you think that I have no filters and could jump in front of a mic and do whatever, when it comes to the personal relationship stuff and some of the other stuff, I get completely scared. Like, calling Dan or emailing Dan would petrify me and give me 7 heart attacks and 4 strokes. I'd have to take a bunch of pills. So I just picked someone's brain. Hey, what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. We discussed it. And I, was getting ready to craft a nice email to Dan saying, listen, I don't know what your next move is. I don't know if you're looking for anyone to be a part of anything. If your network or whatever you're doing is going to be bigger than just your show and there's room for someone else, that'd be great. If not, I'd be really happy just picking your brain about my career and where you think maybe I should go next, because Dan always gives great advice. Well, of course, I was scaredy cat and didn't type that email. And now here we are where Dan is leaving ESPN. And if I reach out now, I'm going to look like the moocher asshole. So we're going to hold off a little bit on that. But let's get to the crux of the thing. So Dan and his crew leaving ESPN. What are they doing next? Well, I don't know. I certainly know plenty of people that I could get the information from, but I don't want to know. I don't want to be responsible for knowing something and having to keep that tight. I'd rather just not know. So I don't want to put my friends or former colleagues in that position. It's just not something I feel comfortable doing. So I don't want to know. I called up someone very familiar with Dan and close to Dan last night. And the first thing I said when this person picked up the phone was, please don't tell me anything. I don't want to know. And then we just had a conversation about something else. But I really don't want to know. Now, I can guess, right? There's a couple of moves. I think a year or two ago, I would have said, there's no doubt in my mind that Dan is going to go and get the offer, like Mad Dog Chris Russo, to have his own channel on Sirius XM, that he's going to be able to staff with all of his people, and it'll be like Howard, right? There'll be the show, and then there'll be the Mike Ryan show, and then the shipping container will have a show, and then Mina gets a show, and this person gets a show, and that person gets a show, and it's Dan Radio, right? I thought that's where they were going, and maybe that still is a possibility. There's some interesting, really wonky radio things going on where SiriusXM, which is owned by Liberty Media, has been gaining shares of iHeart, which is the largest radio company in the country, as iHeart gets closer to maybe yet another bankruptcy and needs to be bailed out. They've been firing thousands of people. And it would seem a likely thing that soon SiriusXM might be the owner of iHeart and then completely rearrange radio as we know it, where basically there's one pop station, and it'll just be on 27 different radio stations across the country, and one rock station will be on, just like SiriusXM is now. You have your pop station, you have your rock station, you have your classic rock station, and that's what it's going to be if they take over iHeart. So I don't know what financial position SiriusXM is in as they make this play to maybe get iHeart on a reduced price before they go bankrupt again, or however that works. So that was my first thought. Then, obviously, Joe Rogan gets the big deal with Spotify, and I don't know that much about Spotify and their management and how they work. But that seems like a place where there's really no rules, right? Like, Dan doesn't have to answer to company memos. every day, and they don't have to be scared of their own shadow. But again, I don't know enough about it, but that would seem like another likely place. I've also thought about this, which is, I think and again, I don't know. It would seem logical to me if Dan's play this time around is to set up a situation where eventually whatever entity is started gets handed off to Mike in the shipping container at some point, with Dan doing less and less work as he gets older. Not that he's old, but he just got married, and I don't know if there's kids gonna be happening or whatever. But just as he moves on in life, he doesn't want to show up every morning. And Stugatz, is going to be doing whatever makes Stugatz money, whatever that is. So it would seem to me also the possibility of Dan starting his own entity that we can't even dream of, just so that he is his own boss in every single way and is able to set those guys up in the shipping container, and Mike and everybody else, with their own stuff, and no one else gets involved. I don't really know, but those are the three things that I thought about when I saw the announcement yesterday, and what I've been thinking about for the last couple of months is I knew that Dan would leave ESPN. I think this is, here's the thing is, and this is not a secret, nor is this me being Debbie Downer to anything, but every show throws out their download numbers, right? Every podcasted show throws out their download numbers and their clicks and all of that stuff. And I'm not trying to be a bad guy, but I want you to look behind the curtain and just know a lot of those numbers can be presented in ways that inflate the final number. And I'll just give you a for instance. And this probably doesn't happen that much anymore, but it's just an example that comes to the top of my mind, which is you log on to a podcast, right? Okay, so the software on the back end of that podcast server records you logging in. Boom, that's a click. Well, let's just say there's a blip in the link, right? There's the Wi-Fi flutters, the Ethernet flutters, the internet flutters, and it has to reconnect real quick. You may not even notice it, but it has to reconnect real quick, right? There's buffering. It reconnects real quick. Well, that counts as another listen, even though it's really not another listen. It's the same listener, but in zeros and ones in that world, it counts as another listener. And how many times does that happen over the course of a podcast? Well, we found it actually happens a lot. I read an article, I remember back, when this stuff started to really take off, whether it was 2013, 14, 15, whatever, that a good quarter plus, 25 to 30% of podcast numbers were basically like reconnections or just kind of bogus. Now that's 6-7 years ago. So that may have, I don't know if that's still true or not. I haven't dug into it recently, but I can just tell you, having run my own streaming and podcast thing when I was doing SoFlo Radio and All Canes Radio, and overseeing a lot of the ticket stuff and getting the behind the scenes of all that, and eventually then also QAM and 2 radio stations, and being involved in high level meetings with corporate on podcasts and downloads and streaming and whatnot. The numbers that are publicly sent out sometimes tend to be inflated. Now, that doesn't mean, whether the Le Batard Show has 12 million downloads a month or not. If you take let's just say you take 30% off of that, because that's the inflation number. All right, so what? They've got 9 million. I mean, it's still a shit ton of people that listen to that show every day. And so that's freaking amazing. It's ridiculous, actually. But we just got to be wary. We just got to take everything in a grain of salt when we talk about clicks and listeners and connections and all of this stuff in that world. All right, that aside, so I laid out what I think the future of the show is going to be. I may be totally wrong. I have no idea. And again, I don't want to know. But it's either Dan's channel on SiriusXM, it's Spotify or one of the major podcast companies out there, or it's their own entity. Whatever it is, it's going to give Dan the freedom that he wants and also allow him to eventually pass the reins over to Mike in the shipping container or whoever is going to take the reins. That's going to be worked out in the deal. It has to be. The one thing I will say that I think is in the Le Batard crew's corner is their advertisers, the AutoZones of the world, are extremely loyal. So I think they have a leg up, whereas someone like me doesn't, because the biggest thing about podcast and streaming and going off the terrestrial and off the network grid is monetizing. And in order to get big time advertising to support the operation, I mean, you've got to be the best of the best. And they are. They're able to go to whatever they do next with a boatload of advertisers that are willing to support them and put down big money for that content. And that gives them a great footing to stand on as it relates to being successful. So I'm happy for those guys, because as much as ESPN, as we like to think of as the creme de la creme, and the you get to the top of the mountain when you get to ESPN, now we're getting to a world where that's not so much the case, where you can have success at other places and probably have less rules and make more money. So I'm really happy for those guys. And, maybe one of these days I'll get the balls to actually send that email to Dan and say, hey, would you have any advice for me? Maybe that'll happen. Now's not the time, though. He's got too much stuff to think about. All right. Hopefully I didn't meander too much and gave you some stuff to chew on, some stuff to think about. Always follow the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit me in the comments, hit me on social media at Miami Radio Beast. I will see you when I see you. Hopefully someday we will all be able to be back at the Cleveland Era without masks on and partying and, having some drinks. Hopefully that day is coming soon. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.